So I think we're good. I may have to, if Rick knocks at the door, I may have to let him in, but I think we're good to get started.
Okay, great. Let's call this meeting to order. The first item of business would be the April meeting minutes. I had one thing about the minutes that struck me as odd, which I think should change. And that is in the section of public comment, it says the public has been instructed to go to the board page on our website. There's also streaming to email their questions and comments. I'm not sure that quite belongs there. But I don't know if anybody has any other feelings about it. It doesn't really reflect anybody's public comments.
Were there any public comments during that period on the library website? I've been trying to look for it.
No,
I think so.
no.
So I'm not sure that really belongs there, but
Ike, is that something, Ike, that we are watching during our live meetings? Is anybody keeping an eye on that so we would know if public comments were coming in?
Not during our live meetings, but the public comment period is really just a comment period. So we wouldn't necessarily have an immediate reaction to them in any event.
Okay.
I have put it on this time so that if there is somebody who posts a comment, I can let people know, but I did not last time. And there are 5 people watching us.
wow, we've got an audience.
So Frank, what would you like the record to reflect there? There were no public comments?
Yeah, I just don't think that it should reflect any public comments. That's all.
So we can approve this with that taken out.
Okay, all right. So with that change, I would move that we approve the minutes from April 20th, 2020.
I seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It passes. Okay, next is the April prepaid warrants checks and the May warrant checks. I move that we approve the April prepaid checks, number 67893 to 67895, and number 67899 to 67900, totaling $2,852.70. In addition, I move that we approve the May warrant checks, summary sheet reflecting checks 67904 to 67944.
So the action is to approve the expenditures, and then the approving reporting comes later.
Approve the prepaid checks and the warrant checks, yes. That's the motion.
I second the motion for the approval of the prepaid checks and the warrant checks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I called Ike earlier because the $316,000 check to the school district, I don't remember signing, but apparently I did. That was for our contribution to the retirement system, which I guess goes through the school district. That's not new, Ike. Has that always been the case?
That's always been the case. Yeah.
Okay, so next is the approval of the financial reports. This includes the expenditures we just approved, the April prepaid checks and the May warrant summary sheets. There's a budget report and an income report. I believe, Ike, you have a request to reallocate some money.
I do, and it's unusual for there to be so many multiple reallocation requests. But this one is, we live in very unusual times, but so we're overspent a little bit on repairs and maintenance. And there's also the possibility that we may have to do some retrofitting of some of our service points to make sure that there are sneeze guards, there are barriers between the staff and the public. And that could be it could be a pretty large expense because we have so many points of service. So we have 2 points of service at the circulation desk. We have the information desk, the children's room desk, the reference desk, the local history desk. And so we've had Rick and I, Rick has just joined the meeting, by the way. So Rick and I met on Friday last week with representatives from Creaticor. I'm not sure if you know them. They're a company in Half Moon who their regular business is designing trade show booths, and exhibits, and since they're not doing a lot of that these days, they have been consulting with a few libraries, and including the Clifton Park Half Moon Public Library, to come in and give us an idea of what it might cost and what it might look like to do these kinds of barriers. So we met with them on Friday and have kind of a rough guesstimate of what it might cost. And Rick and I tomorrow morning for an additional quotation or contribution to this discussion are going to meet with the folks from Allardyce Glass to see if they can give us an additional quote. But we think it could be a relatively expensive proposition, which is why we're asking for this amount of money to be reallocated from capital projects, which we're not going to be able to spend this year because we have one outstanding project which hasn't even gone to bid yet, and so it's unlikely to happen. It won't happen before the end of this fiscal year.
Are you comfortable giving a ballpark figure at this point, or do you think that's premature?
I think it might be a little bit premature. We have another upcoming meeting with them, but it could be in the $15,000 to $20,000 range.
Wow.
Depending on what we decide to do. And part of our conundrum at the moment is how permanent is this going to be? Is it a construction project, or is it going to be more temporary? And we just don't know. It does seem like at this point that what we're dealing with now is something that we may be dealing with for a long time to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ike, I also had a question in the income report. Do you want me to
Yes.
wait for that, or?
Oh, no, go ahead. You go ahead.
My question was about the Friends and the rent we're charging them.
Yes.
And is that something we need to look at, given that they can't be operating right now either?
I think I have been in touch with them, but I will reach out to them and see, because, while we're closed, they're not really generating any income.
Right.
Either, because the income all comes from the bookshop. What I don't know, I think they were eligible for some of the PPP funding. So if they got that, then they would have a source of income, but I don't know. I'm unaware. And they haven't reached out to me yet to ask about stopping that rent payment.
Okay.
Technically, I guess we could do it, at least stop the collection of it for the time being. I don't know that we could forgive it. That might be a problem with the state. But yeah, if they were in a position that they couldn't pay it now, we could probably at the very least defer it.
Well, it seems as though, given that the money is what comes back around to us as a library, it seems like it would be a nice gesture to suspend something temporarily.
Yeah, I think
agree. Sorry.
Right.
I agree with Katie. I think that makes sense.
So I guess if they ask for that, we can deal with that then, if that's something they ask for. Or you could ask them, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it a question of waiting for them to ask or reaching out to them and proposing it to them?
I think we should reach out to them, right? I mean, if you're doing a nice gesture, might as well be nice about it.
Or just ask them for more information at this point, like what is going on with them, and then we'll know more about what to do.
Right, and because I don't have a good sense of what their reserves are, to be perfectly honest. And I know that they do still have some income. They have quite a robust Amazon book trade. So
Right,
even
but
though
they can't actually get in to even ship the things that they may be selling on Amazon though, right?
they have, Jeff Budge, who manages the shop, took a lot of that stuff home with him when he
Okay.
went last time. And I have been, the few times when I've scheduled appointments with librarians to get in to get things they need to work from home, I've also reached out to him to extend that offer to come in and get what he needs. He hasn't always taken me up on it because I think he did really take a bunch of stuff home with him.
Okay.
Are there any other questions about the income report, or we need a motion to move the 30,000 on the budget report, right?
I move to reallocate $30,000 from the capital projects to the repairs and maintenance budget.
I
One second.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes.
So was just for the record, that was Katie moved and Janet seconded
I think that's right. Yeah.
for Carmen. All right.
Okay, so with that change, I make a motion that we approve the financial reports, the prepaid check, April prepaid checks, the May warrant summary sheets, the budget report, and the income report. That's my motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
And I just want to make sure Carmen had her hand up, and I want to make sure, Carmen, that was indeed your question.
No, it was when you asked the other one about Katie moving the motion first and then
Okay.
Janet second. Yeah, because
All
there was a little bit of talk over there, so I wasn't clear who was first.
Right.
Thank you.
The next thing is the president's report. I have nothing in particular other than to once again thank the staff for their heroic efforts. The library really, in a way, isn't closed. It's open in a virtual way, and there's so much programming that I hope the public is aware of it and takes advantage of it. And I will talk about this later, but it looks like our elections are going to proceed, and the budget vote will proceed in June. And I guess we're making plans to reopen, which is a very hopeful sign. Anyway, thank you all for your work and adjusting to this crisis. Next up is public comment, which I don't think we have. Any correspondence and communication?
No.
Then we're up to the director's report.
So as Frank mentioned, at our last meeting, the board did take action to reschedule the budget vote and trustee election for the 27th of June, barring any new executive orders from the governor, which is exactly what there was. So the governor issued a new executive order which said that school district and school library district votes will take place by mail in June. We have been able to coordinate with the school district in order to get the library proposition and the trustee candidates on the same ballot with the school budget and the school propositions. and they will do all of the coordinating for that. They actually use a third-party firm to outsource that, and so the ballots will be mailed to every registered voter in the district.
So there's a company that the school district works with that to provide those services that we're glomming on to get our elections done and our budget approved.
That's correct.
Do we know how much that's going to cost us? What our contribution is?
I don't think it will cost us anything.
That's good.
No. I think that might have been part of the executive order. So we did have, and this is where we probably want to take a motion. The part of the executive order said that we could opt not to be on the school ballot if we wanted to do it on our own. And I don't think we want to do that because it would be quite a thing to try to coordinate. And since they've already got it coordinated and it's the same, same voters, same tax bill, same tax collector, I think it makes sense.
Well, then I would make a motion to rescind the previously scheduled budget vote and elections that we noticed for June 25th, and we should hold them on June 9th, along with the school district.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes.
Then speaking of phased reopening plans, the clear. I mean, nothing is really clear. So there's not a ton of guidance about which one of the governor's 4 phases that we would fall into. It seems like on its surface, in terms of our mission and the work that we do for the public, we would likely fall into phase 4, which has arts, entertainment, and education. And I think since we're chartered by the state education department, that would make sense. But it also seems as if some of the work that we do, the administrative work, might fall into phase 2, the office, the non-public facing work that we do. It could be in phase 2. So it's hard to say whether or not, which one of those 2 phases we would fall into. And then this morning, there was some discussion after the governor's press conference today, where it does seem like some regions nearby, not the capital district yet, could start operating as early as Friday if they meet the 7 criteria. And it does seem as if the Southern Tier, Mohawk Valley, and Finger Lakes regions meet all 7 criteria, so they can start their phase 1 operations. Along with that, he added some retail activity to phase 1, which hadn't been there before, which was retail with curbside service. And so there have been some people around the state in the library land kind of interpreting retail curbside service or library curbside circulation as something that could fall within that retail curbside service. There hasn't been any direct advice about that. It makes me a little leery because unlike retail, libraries take things in and give them out. So we would have materials being returned to us in addition. So it's not a one-way proposition for us. And so it doesn't seem like that's a model that would fit for us falling into phase 1. So at the moment, it's lacking clarity.
Do we have any idea, like, who's going to make the call for our region with respect to phase 1? I mean, do you know if our region is ready to enter phase 1?
Our region is not. As of this afternoon, there are 2 of these 7 criteria that we do not meet, or 2.5, I guess. So, and they are the first 2. So we haven't had a 14-day decline in hospitalizations, and we have not had a 14-day decline in hospital deaths or fewer than 5 deaths in the region. All of the others we meet, with the exception of the testing, but there's a new dashboard that was put up this afternoon that says that we're expected to, in short order, meet the testing requirement. There's supposed to be a regional office to keep track of these things. The last word I had was that the governor himself had put him in charge of the capital region. But that may have changed. I'm not sure I have the most up-to-date information there. And then this afternoon, he also made some indication that it might come down to a local or municipal decision about reopening phases. So again, still not a lot of clarity.
Do we know what the city is?
So at the moment we don't. They just last Friday, I believe, convened a reopening committee. And I don't know that there's any news that has come out of that yet.
And do you know like where the New York Library Association is with this? Are they going to give us guidance around what phase they believe?
We would hope so, but there hasn't been any such guidance forthcoming yet. I know that they have been meeting behind the scenes in Albany with folks, but there hasn't been any, like I said, any concrete or clear guidance forthcoming yet.
And so therefore we have not announced anything to the public yet. Is that true?
That's correct.
Because it seems like it would be good to be able to do that so people had a sense of what we're waiting for.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. So the SALS and MVLS startup committee continues to meet, but the governor's plan throws a lot of that work into question, because I think, as I mentioned in my written report, we had hoped to come out with a unified voice and open together and be able to reassure people the way we were handling materials was safe and in the best interest of everybody across this 8-county region, where we share a database and a catalog and materials that we ship back and forth. But since the governor's taken this regional approach, in the SALS system, one of the counties in SALS is in the North Country, which seems to be a region and outside of the capital region, and that's Hamilton County. And the North Country seems to be probably a step or two ahead of the capital region in terms of meeting all of these 7 criteria. The same is true with the Mohawk Valley Library System, MVLS, where one of the 4 counties they serve is in the capital region, and the rest are all in the Mohawk Valley region. Today, Mohawk Valley region got the go-ahead to start up with phase 1 on Friday. The headquarters of both of these systems are both within the capital region. So the Mohawk Valley Library System headquarters is in Rotterdam in Schenectady County, and SALS is headquartered here in Saratoga Springs. And I think that the 2 systems would, even if some of the smaller libraries, and it is the smaller library, so in Hamilton County, it's places like Indian Lake and Racket Lake, so the very smallest libraries in the system. And in Mohawk Valley, it's the libraries in Fulton, Montgomery, and Schoharie counties.
Yet they're still taking in books and handing out books. They would be doing normal business, I assume.
Potentially, once they figure out what phase they're in, but it seems like the systems would not open, because the system headquarters, which is where the delivery system come out of. And so it seems like they would be working with their own collection, so they wouldn't have access. Now you can place a hold in Racket Lake and we'll send it from Schenectady County to fill that hold. That wouldn't happen. I think the systems would remain closed, but the libraries could potentially open when they figure out what phase they're in, sooner than the systems could.
Well, if it's gonna, it looks like it may go on for a while then for us. And as the other phases open up, I think we're gonna have to be very communicative with the public about the whys and the wherefores. We're not open, but here's what we have. We're gonna have to, because there obviously questions will arise as time goes by about why people can't enter the library.
Right. So, in addition to those, to the regions meeting these 7 criteria, which we're at 5 out of the 7, then there are the phases. And once we figure out which phase we fall into, and then in order for us to reopen, there are these other business precautions that we have to take. And of these precautions, we have a good sense of the first number. And we did some of this before we closed, and it was in our public health response plan before we closed, about adjusting hours, enacting social distancing, restricting non-essential travel, requiring PPE if people are in frequent contact with each other, strict cleaning and sanitation standards. Then it's the next 3 where it can get a little bit dicey for us, and we don't have these in place yet. A continuous health screening process for individuals to enter the workplace. There's some question there about, does that mean everybody who enters the workplace, staff as well as public? And what does a continuous health screening process look like? Are we taking people's temperatures? Are we asking them questions about their health status? And are there issues about patron privacy there if it does require that we have these protocols for both the employees and the members of the public working? So there's some stuff to figure out there. Same thing.
It's almost inconceivable to me that we would be expected to monitor the health of the clients, of the people coming in, the public.
It seemed inconceivable to me that we would even be in this situation where we'd be having this discussion. So I don't know. Same thing with tracking and tracing and reporting of cases. And does that mean amongst our personnel? Or does that mean, and are there privacy concerns here, and how does that work? And so we've got some questions there. And then develop liability processes. And I'm not even sure what that means. So, I know that it means that we have to have, take measures to protect the health and safety of the people who work at the library, and also, have some kind of contingency for when people might start suing us if they feel like they got sick, either as a user of the library or as an employee of the library. Is the way I interpret that, but I don't know. So there's a lot of stuff to figure out here.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Yeah.
You're the lawyer, Frank.
I know. Well, sounds like legal mumble jumble,
Yeah.
which I'm usually good at. So.
Okay.
All right.
And so, given all of those things to consider, I talked about what the impact might be on the SALS MVLS startup committee, where we may not be able to have the unified voice that we want to. Certainly, the systems will come together, and so now we're developing and trying to document best practices for the way materials are handled and libraries operate potentially, but since we cross these regions, there may be some staggered openings that we had hoped to avoid. So, and SSPL Startup Committee, staff have taken a very strong interest in this. And at first, I put out a call, who wants to be on this? And we had so much interest in it. We pulled back and said, now that there are all of these new complications involved, that the Startup Committee really is going to be our leadership team. And each one of us is going to take a role in one of these areas: personnel policy, our public service policy, our space planning, materials handling, and hygiene and cleaning protocols, to make sure that we're meeting all of these criteria that we have to meet before we're allowed to reopen.
No, that sounds efficient.
So, right. And then I just shared a little bit of other news that even though the book festival in person has been canceled, we're going to start doing some virtual programming, starting with an interview that I'm going to do with Roger Rosenblatt. And we're going to involve somebody from the Leaving Our Fingerprints project, which is really a project that multiple people kind of came up with independently, but now are united. So it's the folks from Sal's, the Saratoga Room, the Folk Life Collection at Crandall Library, and various county historians in the region. So collecting local memories about this time that we're living in now.
Great.
And then thought I would share some good news about the Collaborative to End Homelessness and the pretty amazing success they've had since the Code Blue moved into the Holiday Inn. And it kind of lends credence to this notion that if you get people housed and wrap the services around them, you can have some pretty great success. So a number of the people who, since they have gone out of Code Blue, they moved multiple times since March. So they moved out of the building on Adelphi Street because they couldn't, not only could they not get 6 feet between people, they could only get 6 inches between people. They were, and they moved from there temporarily into the senior center after they stopped serving seniors and found that they still were cramped in there. And so they, with some community development block grant funding from the city, were able to rent a bunch of rooms at the Holiday Inn. And the good news, according to Karen Gregory, who is the director at Shelters, not one of these people got sick.
That's awesome.
And 11 of them have found jobs. A number of them have permanent housing, and they're still looking for housing. And so so the collaborative was on pause like everything else, but since they found that they've had this success, they're ramping things back up. And so if anybody knows of anybody who's hiring or has a place to rent, if you want to share that information with me, and I'll make sure that it gets to Shelters and to the people at the city who came up with this plan for the Holiday Inn.
Okay. Thank you, Ike. Thanks for that news.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to do some reports. The use statistics.
So use statistics, as we discussed last time, are, in this kind of situation, are pretty meaningless, right? I mean, because we have a whole nother way of operating. But the interesting thing, as you would expect, are these very large increases in use of our digital materials. So in the range of about 30 to 50%, or for ebooks, a 68% increase in use of ebooks compared to the same period last month.
This is just not useful.
I know it's not useful. It's not useful. The programs, let me tell you what you're seeing here with the library programs. These are mostly Zoom programs that are interactive. So they're different from recordings that have been posted on Facebook and YouTube and our other social media channels. So these are actually our in-person programs that librarians are conducting with people who register for them and they come into a Zoom meeting just like this one. So
Okay.
that's what you're seeing there, versus what you'll see next down here, which is the Facebook stats that Gina shared with you. And you'll see that our reach here is much farther than it is with the Zoom things, because the Zoom stuff is a relatively controlled environment.
Ike, is the people reached indicating how often it was shared? What is the difference between people reached and engagements?
So engagements are things like reactions, like likes and shares, etc. And people reached is exactly it. It's the number of screens that it showed up, like feeds that it showed up in. I believe. I'm not 100% certain about that, but I will, unless somebody else here has a better notion of that, I'm glad to defer. I'll ask Gina for some clarification. She's the one who's been providing these statistics. And so the top part of these are simply posts that have no content, so no video. It's I shouldn't say no content, but they're static, versus the second here, which are the videos, and you'll see that the videos get much more interaction in terms of engagements. Lots of love for Miss Sarah's songs and finger plays. So any questions about any of that?
No.
Yeah. It's great how many different kinds of things are happening.
It is. So I think in this document, I think I probably, the one that I'm sharing with you on the screen, I probably left out the administrative services report, but I did want to let you know, and that's where we report things like computer use, et cetera. And I did want to share that while we're not able to, well, we don't have people in the building using the computers are being put to use for this Fold at Home project, where it's doing the computing power is being used in research that's hopefully helping to find some solutions to the coronavirus situation, because it's modeling protein variations. I'm not sure I understand it 100%, but it's a citizen science project. And so we've turned on all of the computers in our training lab and turned the processing power over to that project. So they're being used that way. And in the administrative services report, we also talk about sustainability. And even though, we didn't survey people this month about our sustainability projects, we did have a pretty amazing participation that I don't know if Jen Ferris, you want to talk about, in the Earth Day Echo Challenge.
So I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I'm going to paraphrase here, but the staff participated in the Earth Day Eco Challenge, which I would say 1/3 of the staff participated in it. And out of everybody throughout the entire world that participated, we ranked number 45 in how much activity and learning the staff did during this time. And one of the projects that came out of people learning about the environment was a proposal to start composting in the staff kitchen. It's very complete, and I can't wait to get it started when we're allowed to be back in the building and use our kitchen in a appropriate and safe environment.
Thanks, Jen. And I think all of that learning leads perfectly into Tara's report, right?
Before we get there, I have one question.
Yeah.
Are we using the 3D printer to make any headgear or any of those things?
We've had that discussion and we're not, and we've gone back and forth. What we don't have are the materials to do that.
Okay.
And we've even talked about if there were the possibility of lending that printer to somebody who was doing that, but we haven't figured that out yet.
Okay.
But that is a great question, and we have had the conversation internally about that.
Which would take us to Tara.
Hi there.
Hi,
So-
Tara.
Hi there. Did you have any questions about my report and about the information I included, which primarily focused on the staff development that's been happening and my own measures of employee engagement, which it's hard at this time since we're all apart to know how well people are doing. So I'm finding creative ways to sort of get at that information. Did you have any questions about any of the information?
No, but I
No.
really like this chart that you did. It was very interesting to see all the different things in a chart.
And I just wanted to share with you too, one of our senior clerks in circulation, Amy Peck, sent me a lovely email, and she is permitting me to share it with you. She said, I just wanted you to know that I'm enjoying the Think HR website. I think it's helping me understand myself better and allowing me to think about my reactions in the workplace and at home. As my husband said to me today, quote, "What happened to my wife?" I told him it was the customer service training. Thank you for allowing us to use this training tool.
That's great. I also really enjoyed reading the survey, Tara. I thought it was organized really well, and thank you for letting us see all the comments and get a sense of how people feel like they're doing and what they need.
Oh, you're welcome. No, and I think it's a great tool, and I'm discovering all sorts of bells and whistles that Paylocity actually launched prior to the pandemic that have kind of gotten lost in the shuffle of everything else. But I think it's really been timely, and it's fantastic that so many of our employees have been so engaged with it. So there are other things that we can use and other surveys that we can launch as we go along here too. So looking forward to continuing to use these things that we have at our disposal.
Yeah. Nice.
It sounds like you're learning a lot, Tara, about different stuff, different ways to.
So much.
All right.
Does anybody have any other questions for Tara? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara.
I did have one question about, but it kind of is related to the phased reopening I assume that some of those staff issues are being discussed in some of the trainings and things you're going to about what to do when people are not going to necessarily want to be in the public, or how all of that is being handled. Is that true? Or
it is, in that there's a lot of guidance that's forthcoming. I think in my report I referenced that I've been attending like 2 to 3 webinars a week that blessedly are being given at no cost by the attorneys that we work with. And they've been releasing more and more guidance around that, as has SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management that I'm a dues paying member of. And so a lot of that is being incorporated into, as I referred to earlier, putting together, personnel policies. And, some of them will have to address testing and management of personal health information, as well as responding to staff concerns about safety in the workplace, especially people who are immunocompromised or otherwise part of a high-risk population. So all of that is going to have to figure into the kind of reopening plan that we put together, and that we, I think by law, have to have before we can reopen. So we're working on that.
okay, good.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Jennifer Ferris, is there anything you'd like to point out? Other than
My
what you've
report
already-
has a lot of zeros.
I was saying, do you want me to scroll past your stats here and get down to the good stuff?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I guess because I didn't want to leave my report empty, I put some numbers on, some more numbers on the virtual collections that we have been providing. And if anyone in the public's listening out there and you've lost your library card number, or you need a card in the first place and live in the Saratoga Springs School District, we're giving out library cards during this time so you can have access to the Saratoga Springs virtual collections. So that is on our website. And in publishing land, typically Tuesday is new release day, and we've been trying to keep up with that. So every Tuesday we add new books to our collection. And as of the writing of this report, Camino Winds came out, I believe, last Tuesday, and it's one of our top requested titles. So it's very hard to keep up with demand. Otherwise, any questions?
No, thank you. The Adult Services Monthly Report. Jen O here?
No, I think Laura Clark is here. Oh, is this adults? Oh, is adult or youth services?
Adult.
Okay.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just gonna actually minimize this because I got my report up here.
Here we go.
Yeah, so as we mentioned earlier, because we're not in the building, staff have been trying to do a lot more virtually, and we've got a few things that are in person and some that are recorded. One of the really popular programs was Beyond Hosta Shade Gardening with Suzanne Billet, and that was something that we allowed people to see online afterwards too. And so it's been nice to see that it was both an in-person virtual program, and then because it was recorded, that we've been able to reach an even broader audience after the recording was posted online on our YouTube channel. So that's been a really nice experience to have. As you can see, some of the other things: vegetable gardening in small spaces, people have been doing Zoom book chats. Marianne has been doing some poetry collaborations with several of staff members that have been really quite beautiful, I think, and moving. And we started doing community conversations with some of our local organizations in the area, like Wellspring and Captain, and that's been really great because they've been talking about what they're offering the community, especially during this time of COVID. Music of the Lake Houses was a Saratoga Room program that was well attended, and we're trying to figure out if we can get that up online with some of the permissions from music. And other than that, we're reading a lot and we're doing a lot of training. We had a Reference USA refresher, and staff have been continuing to work on projects and including a reference handbook, and yeah. I didn't include everything here because I decided that the report was already getting a little too long with everything that staff are doing. But everybody seems to be jumping in, and our part-time staff even are working hard and moving along best we can.
So back to youth services.
Yep. So, thank you, Jen.
Sure.
Is Sarah Durbin here?
Sarah is not, I don't believe. Laura Clark is.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You said that. Does Laura Clark?
I think Laura's here. You're here, right, Laura? Let me see.
Yep.
Laura?
Okay,
She here?
got it.
There she is. Okay.
Yeah. I thought we were all unmuted
Mhm.
during this meeting. Okay, so we've been having a lot of video recordings. We felt it was important for the kids to see, like Miss Sarah and Miss Renee, the people who normally do the story times. They like to see the people they're familiar with. And Sarah's, as I think somebody mentioned before, her finger plays are extremely popular. So that seems to be the basis of what we've done. The kids are still doing the 1,000 books before kindergarten because that can be done online. Of course, they can't pick up their prizes, but they can still do that. We are hard at work on the summer programs and trying to figure out how we're going to hand out prizes, which probably won't be that much, probably just a packet of prizes at the end. But we are working on a lot of virtual programs for this summer. And I guess that's about it. And oh, we've been doing crafts too. I did a few crafts and Renee's done a few crafts also. And the diversity audit that Sarah and Renee have worked on is kind of finished almost. And keep on going down.
Okay, Jody, just keep scrolling. Okay.
Yeah, the teens advisory group, they had a virtual meeting and that was pretty successful. Heather's been doing some book chats and she did the TikTok book domino thing, and Heather and Sarah are going to be working on the Animoto as soon as we get complete approval for that. It's almost ready to go as another way to do book talks. And Heather did a tip for teens, and then that's about it so far. And again, we're working on the summer program and Teen Tribune.
Does anybody have any questions for Sarah? Oh, that wasn't, so I'm sorry, that was Laura.
For Laura.
Yeah, that's all right. I can pretend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and here are staff working from home. That's right.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. Oh, I like the cat and Sarah.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Is our friend Rick here?
I am here.
Rick, how are you?
I'm doing reasonably well. Spending a lot of time working on these electrostatic sprayers and what they utilize and how it would affect other things in the library, like the fish and the electronics. And so were there any questions to my report? Nothing exciting. We've been keeping the equipment, functioning. We've had a few minor issues, but most of that has been taken care of. And the rest is really waiting for us to kind of open for somewhat business so I can get contractors in there. We're all waiting on the governor's plan.
And you don't think there's any, oh, wait a minute. The cleaning supplies, is that going to be an issue?
Well, we did, when I was there on Tuesday, we got another delivery of the soap, which was like 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Ike was able to pick up some hand sanitizer, not the type we use, the Touchless, but we can use that in other ways, and it's a great backup. I keep following up on our back orders, and I've ordered with multiple companies because if it's prorated, you might get 1 or 2 out of 10. So, I'm doing the best I can. Reality is that, this is all allocation. So we've gotten more gloves in. The PPE is key. You know, Ike was able to pick up some free masks previously also. So, I mean, at least initially, I believe we're in a good point. Lysol/Clorox wipes could be, you know, critical, but I think that things are starting to loosen up. We just keep on top of it as best we can.
It sounds like we have a favorable contract with County Waste.
Yeah, I used some other business that was in the local area. The guy who used to own County Waste sold it, and then after 5 years for his no compete, he started another company called Twin Bridges, and they were taking a lot of business. So basically, I said, you know, people know when our contracts due because it's public, basically, and people are always asking. And I just use the local competition to really work them over,
Get a
so
better
to speak.
price. So that's
Well,
good. That saves money.
It does. It's not a huge amount, but hey, you know, $1,200 a year, that can go to, hey, the increased cost, you know, for other materials, because I do think that, you know, the price points are definitely going up. They're not going down because the demand is high and the supply is low.
Right.
I did speak to the company that does the parking lot work. He said he couldn't come yet. They hadn't been released to do that, but he's aware of it. That company has actually been sold out to a company that it was associated with before. The main owner, Robert, had, you know, retired, and he sold it out directly to, you want to call the main company that they were under previous. So there's really no real change. I expect good service. It's just all timing. I haven't really been able to speak to the electrician about getting them in. I do know everybody's really biting at the bit to get out and get stuff in a queue. It's just not being able to do it at this point.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I think we're on to old business. Is that right, Ike?
I believe so.
All right. So the budget vote and the trustee election we've talked about.
Right.
The Saratoga Book Festival.
We talked about.
We spoke about. So the only new business moving on is the draft reopening plan.
And so this is sort of our own internal version of what our services might look like as we phase our services back in. So this is a little bit different from an internal reopening plan that will kind of dictate what our workplace looks like for the time being. This will give some information to the public about what kinds of services we can provide as time goes by and as we have a better sense of what we can do to maintain people's safety. So it's in 8 phases that anticipates that we need to get back into the building, get all of the materials that have been piling up checked in, routed to their rightful owners, et cetera, do the work that we can do, and that our service initially to the public will look pretty much as it does today for that initial period where we are doing only virtual programs and circulation, while we are dealing with the situation inside the library. Phase 2, we anticipate that when we can begin circulating physical materials, that it will most likely start with a curbside touchless deliveries sort of system, or we may be able to use our van to do some touchless delivery by appointment, or make use of the mail, so that we could start to get new materials into the hands of people without actually coming into contact with them, is what we anticipate that first phase will look like. While we're still doing programs and other things virtually, and for these first few phases, still having staff who can work from home. Then we anticipate there might come a phase where we will allow people into the building by appointment to pick up holds, maintaining closed stacks, but allowing people to come in to check their things out. And then we anticipate that there will be a stage when we'll have to limit the number of people who are in the building, maybe open some stacks to them so that they could do some browsing, but keep meeting rooms and furniture and computers off limits so people can come in, get materials, and exit. And then have some metered access to the building where people may be able to stay for a while, may be able to find something on the shelf and sit for a bit. And then eventually we anticipate that there might be a stage where we're not having to keep track of everybody coming in and out of the building. And then a stage where we will be able to reinstitute some programs and meetings, but probably still maintaining a social distance. And then the final phase being our full opening and operation.
And maybe this doesn't go directly to, maybe it's more properly like the in-house preparation, but I assume that you're thinking about the public would be wearing a mask.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And so that'll be part of, those kinds of policies, I think will be baked into our expanded public health emergency plan, and it will come out of the work of the staff startup committee. So that one of the areas that the startup committee is going to focus on are the public service policies and things like that would be sort of a temporary adjustment to our patron behavior policy.
And Ike, how are you, what kind of criteria are you going to use between these phases? What is your sense of what data you're going to rely on?
Right. So it is a tricky question because everything is moving so quickly, and there's not a whole lot of clarity about the guidance. But I think that we'll have to take our lead from the public health officials, from the county Department of Public Health, and from the state health department about whether things are improving. And we're also anticipating, just like with the governor's 4-phased plan for reopening, that if there are setbacks, we may have to take a step back as well. So I don't know that we'll have something like, I believe the state plan says all these 7 criteria must be met for 2 weeks before you can move on to the next phase. Well, we may try to follow some guidance like that if there is some real guidance forthcoming. So this is something that we're also working on with this SALS and MVLS reopening group. So we're hoping to not all try to reinvent the wheel, but we'll be seeking guidance, like I said, from the public health officials for how long each one of these phases should endure.
And then can we respond rather quickly to how we share that information with the public, that either we have a new section on the front of the website or on Facebook that indicates what phase we're in, and therefore what page, that's easy, that they're not having to go through, and they just know whether they can come or they can't come, or
Yeah, and I think, yeah, so we would have, I think, a plan like this, the whole thing would be up on the website, but we would also share it in chunks and say, this is what we can do for you now
Right, okay.
for the next period of time. Because I agree, there are going to be a whole lot of brand new documents and policy languages coming out of this that are going to be, I mean, as Tara knows, as we all know, there's so much information that we want to be able to distill it for people in a way that's clear for the
Yeah.
moment.
And they just want to know, can they come, can they not? How do they get their materials without wanting to have to go searching through?
Exactly. But we also want to set an expectation that, you know, when we are able to reopen, it's going to be a while before it's business as usual, or business as, you know, as was usual before.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe this would be, you know, some version of this would be useful in educating the public about that, you know, that there will be different phases, and, you know, I don't know how detailed you need to get, but I'm afraid that, you know, as the weather gets better and you know, there's going to be more pressure on the library to open. And yeah, I think that's a good idea if it's prominent on the website, a place where people could get information or even ask questions about it, you know.
I agree. So any more, and this is really just a first draft of this, and it may, so at this point, I'm not seeking any kind of action from the board on it. It's really by way of giving you information about what we anticipate a reopening plan might look like from a public facing point of view.
Well, you know, as the board, each member, I'm sure, is ready to help in any way they can with this. You know, certainly Katie, owning a business, has probably some insight into stuff. If there's anything we can do, please reach out.
Thank you.
So we don't need to take any action on this.
I think at this point it's not quite ready for that, but input, if you want to provide any feedback on it, is certainly welcome.
Janet, did you have any questions about it?
No, just looks very complicated and overwhelming at this point to imagine how you would do all these things. But I guess we'll learn as we go along.
We're getting really good at that, learning as we go along.
Yeah.
When you say the materials handling and you're going to sequester materials, if you get a large number of materials coming in when things reopen, do you have a place to sequester that many things? And how, you know, the question is, how long do you have to do it? And
so these are some questions that the SAL's MVLS reopening committee has been kind of grappling with. And so at least at this stage, so we anticipate that probably through the summer, there won't be any programs or meetings at the library. So that, you know, we are dedicating space to set things aside. Right now, the best advice we have from IMLS, which is the Federal Institute for Library and Museum Services, is that, you know, there are some conflicting information, but the best research is that we probably want to set things aside for 72 hours before they go back on a shelf or into a delivery.
Wow.
And you know, and since we're not having programs and the meeting rooms are going to be closed, we're anticipating that the teen room might be a place for sequestering materials.
or the cafe.
Or the cat. So,
Do we know whether or not the school district is summer school still on the table, right? I mean,
I don't think any decisions have been made yet about summer school, but they are closed for the remainder of the academic year. But last I knew, there was still a question about summer school.
I'm holding out hope that things can move faster. Okay. Is there anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay, I think we're adjourned.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye.
Good night. Oh, wait, there was something in the chat.
Bye.
Let me see what that is.
Oh, you got something? You got a public comment?
No, from Anita, says 5 of the 7 criteria. That's right.
Okay.
Okay, we're done?
Yeah, we're all
We're done.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Good night.